got a bit technical there, but I think we're sorted now. So we can proceed with item 5 on the agenda, which is the subject is Carsbridge House, and this will be given to us by Keith Johnson.
Yep, just to briefly introduce, the report provides an update to committee on planning issues relating to Carsbridge House and the site at Carsbridge, the former distillery and warehousing, which is also subject to a current application for planning permission in principle for redevelopment primarily to residential use. Section 3 sets out the background, which refers to the decision by committee on the 4th of May 2023 to be minded to approve the application, subject to heads of terms of a Section 75 being concluded and planning conditions. It then updates on the unfortunate fire at Carsbridge House in August 24 and the subsequent unauthorised demolition of the house in September 2024. The paper then notes that there was a motion at Council on 3rd of October which expressed anger over the unauthorised demolition of the house and states that the Council agrees to consider a range of possible action, including the making a referral to the Procurator Fiscal against the owner and possibly others, and agrees that officers will present a report on this unauthorised demolition to committee. In terms of the demolition, paragraph 3.8 summarises the service position in that following demolition, service did report that also to the police, and they have confirmed they're preparing a case for submission to Procurator Fiscal under the Planning Listed Building Conservation Areas Scotland Act. The service has been providing help to them, and witness statements have been provided by planning officers who had witnessed the demolition taking place. Consequently, following advice from the Council's external legal representatives, the service, while the Council have the powers to progress with progress the matter to the Fiscal themselves, the service will consider that is now necessary or logical, as the police are undertaking that process with our assistance. We feel that that would be as robust an approach as possible to address the motion that went to Council to hold those responsible and be held to account. In terms of other matters, the next section of the report relates to the Napoleon Pillar, which is a listed column which was next to Carsbridge House, and updates committee that that has now been relocated to the grounds of the remaining 2 former office buildings at Carsbridge, which are now occupied by Resonate Together. It was considered that urgent action was required after the vandalism and fire raising, that pillar, which is listed, could also be damaged. In consultation with Historic Environment Scotland, we arranged for the pillar to be relocated to Resonate Together's property. That was undertaken by the applicant for the planning application, undertaken by a suitably qualified conservation architects. The move has been completed and the pillar has been repaired and cleaned as part of that process. And that will help ensure the preservation of the listed structure in proximity to its previous location. The third part of the report is an update or relates to the application that's outstanding for permission in principle for redevelopment of the former Carsbridge site. The report summarises where we are with that. It's considered that we should progress with negotiations with the applicant to move the application forward, as a separate process to the ongoing case by the police. The report sets out information that we've received about how to address the demolition of Carsbridge House, and an options appraisal was submitted for our consideration by the applicant. And that sets out itself 4 possible options, not exclusive options, but 4 possible options of how to address that. Option 1, which was a rebuilding of the house to historically correct detailing, would be the service's preferred option. There are also, because of the changes with the demolition of Carsbridge House, the indicative master plan, which was previously circulated to committee in 2023, would have to be amended, and also outstanding matters in terms of the heads of terms would have to be reviewed. In recent months, the outstanding matters we had in relation to the education capacity contribution and towards securing business use within the former office buildings which are remaining have been progressed by the applicant and ourselves, and the report summarises our position on those. So in summary, in terms of the main aspects, in terms of the demolition of Carsbridge House, which was unauthorised, it is considered that the council should continue to support the case being pursued by the police Scotland in relation to the criminal offence, and that the council itself would not pursue a separate case to Procurator Fiscal. In terms of the application for Planning Permission Principle, the service would wish to proceed with negotiations to conclude the outstanding elements of the Section 75 and address the consequences of the demolition of Carsbridge House, and to bring that application back to committee once these matters have been concluded for a decision on that. In summary then, the recommendations are set out in 2.1 and we would recommend as per those. Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Any questions? Councillor Fairley.
Thanks, Chair. Keith, at 310, in relation to the Napoleon Pillar, it gives a background as to why it was moved and the threat to it, and it's been moved to its current location. It talks at the bottom of that, 310, the review of possible options result and resonate together to occupy the nearby Uncle House and Harvey House, which is former distillery offices, to provide a site within the curtilage of the buildings. They are in the process of purchasing the property from the applicant. If that goes through as anticipated, where does that leave the ownership of the pillar? Who's got ownership and rights over the pillar if it sits in their private property at that point?
If they purchase the property, as you say, and it's sitting within their grounds, my understanding is that ownership would sit with Resonate together.
Sorry, thanks.
That's it? All right, sorry. I thought there was going to be more to it than that. That's fine, so the ownership would pass to the developer. Okay, and to Resonate, sorry.
No, we don't know that either. It will pass to whoever purchases the property. That's who it passes to. So the way the pillar works, the way property law works is it cedes to the ground. So basically it forms kind of part of it,
yeah.
And then any disposal will then go to whoever acquires the property.
And at the moment, that the owner is the developer. Fine. Okay. Any other questions? In that case, sorry, Councillor McTaggart, I didn't see your hand there.
Thank you. I'm very confused about this ownership of the pillar. The pillar belongs to the people of Clackmannshire. The pillar does not belong to a developer, an individual, a group, whatever. It belongs to the people of Clackmannshire, surely. So, I mean, although Carsbridge House was a private house, and that pillar was located in the grounds of that private house, that house has been lying empty for God knows how long. I don't understand how we can just relinquish ownership of our public historic monument, let's say, and allow it to go from pillar to post to whoever happens to have ownership of that particular piece of land at any time in the future. So I just didn't understand that at all. Can I get some clarity, please? I know what you've said, Lane, I understand what you've said, but I don't know, I just can't agree to that. Thanks.
Well, just to say, in terms of the listed buildings, I mean, these are privately owned. If, you may own a house that's listed, it is your property. They are part of the culture of the area, and as you say, the listed process is to help sustain that for everybody's benefit. I mean, it was privately owned where it was before. It was owned by Diageo and then laterally by Advance. I think you're right. What are the consequences of moving it, and what is the best option for moving it? The relocation was in a kind of an urgent emergency situation because we were very concerned, given the damage that was being done regularly to the house, that would become the next target. And we felt that, having it somewhere still at the Carsbridge location, and obviously Resonate agreed to have that, on the assumption that we're going to be purchasing the property. We felt that that was a suitable alternative. It doesn't have to be a permanent one, but it would still be publicly accessible there with Resonate. What they do, the public can get into the property and see it, which I think is another important consideration. If you are going to move something like that, that it's still accessible to the public.
So, just for my own clarity, Keith, who right now has claim of ownership of that pillar?
I believe that would be Advance, who own the site and bought the whole site. They currently own the former office buildings as well.
Can I come back and just...
Please do.
So, I understand that the ownership went along with whoever owned that piece of land. It begs the question, if, let's say Resonate are unsuccessful in buying that building and it reverts back to Advanced Construction, or it's part of the development, so therefore it belongs to the developer, whoever that might be. The future of that column is then dictated by whoever happens to be the owner at any given time. So if they decide at some point in the future, we'll take it away to Edinburgh, we would have no control of that, because they would own it as part of their ownership of that piece of land. Now, I know it's protected, so therefore they can't just demolish it. Well, that said, but it just leaves it at huge risk. Is there nothing we can do to protect that?
I mean, that does beg the question. Does it have any guardianship on it in any nature from any, Gwengo or body like Scottish Heritage, or what we call the Historic Environment Scotland? Do they have any skin in the game, as it were?
Well, I'm just looking at the heads of terms for the Section 75 for the planning permission in principle, and one of the heads of terms was that there would bring forward arrangements and a mechanism to deliver preservation and restoration of the listed buildings within the site. So
That went well.
that went well. But what I'm saying is there obviously things have changed. The pillar has been moved. I think there is scope within that, potentially, that could be covered by that, and we do secure long-term location within the site, and that through the Section 75, I think it would still be possible to secure, to address the concerns you've got about where it is and that it's going to remain on the site going forward.
Councillor Love.
Could
that mean it becomes part of the residence because previous developments around the place, they get a factor? So it could end up there, it could be plunked in the middle of a roundabout, and then the residents would then have to pay as part of their factor fees to maintain that. That could be a possibility. I mean, I don't think that's right, and I don't think the residents would be happy about that. I know the ones who've been surprised that they've ended up having to look after woodlands that came as a shore. But I'm just wondering, could that be a possibility as well then?
Well, I think it does need careful consideration about where the pillar is located, and obviously at the moment, within the grounds of a building occupied residence, it was felt that was quite a suitable location, and in terms of it being cared for, what risk there would be to it, and they would be happy to take on that responsibility. If it was to be moved somewhere else or within the site, then yes, I think we're not at that stage. I think we'd have to be clear about how we secure that long-term maintenance and of the building, who actually owns it, and who's then going to be responsible for looking after it. If it was to pass the kind of a community arrangement like other areas of open space, I think that's something that we would have to be considered carefully if we were going to talk about moving it again from where it is at the moment. At the moment, it would, in theory, would have a kind of single owner, and they've taken on that responsibility.
Given that it was moved in a hurry as part of an emergency process, there was no discussion about it. It was a decision taken in a very ad hoc situation. Logic says that when that calms down, it goes back to where it came from. That's what logic would suggest to me. So it should, without anything else being said, it should go plonk back right where it was, in terms of back with the ownership, with the land where there's an ownership. Now, that brings us to the plan, that where it was in the plan, it looks like being sort of common ground in the sort of sketches and the drawings that I've seen. So ultimately, when all the dust is settled and all the development, who will own the ornamental area and the walled garden? Will that be will it be a common ownership of the residents of the site? Will the council take ownership of that land? What happens to that, the bit of land on which the monument formerly stood?
Excuse me. Well, we probably don't have the answer to those questions yet in terms of where we are with the application, and then these are the matters that still have to be, agreed with the developer in terms of if the permission in principle is granted. Then these are the details that we'd have to go through to issue detailed permissions for development to be allowed to start. So things like who would look after it, or what's the maintenance arrangements for all the open space, and what's within the open space would have to be agreed. We've still got to go through that process. And as I say, I think we need to think carefully about knowing who would own a listed building and what the arrangements would be for maintenance. But yes, normally you wouldn't move a listed building from its original, it has come from Egypt. I suppose it's had a long journey, but where historically it's been there for a long time when it was listed. I think obviously that its setting was next to the house, and unfortunately the house is gone, so that has changed. But in fairness, that's where it was. So I think I don't think we'd say we were closing the door to alternative location. I think what we're saying was we had to act fairly urgently and find a suitable home for it in the meantime, which I think we have done, and it's enhanced the pillar in the meantime from the condition it was in. And I think there is scope, to look at that in terms of the heads of terms.
Okay, and in order to give the pillar long-term protection, is there any advantage in applying to one of the bodies to have it listed and marked as a do not touch, do not remove without permission object?
I think the complexity is that it is listed. By moving it, I think that will be reviewed. If it was returned to its original location, then that might, again, not alter the listing of it. So currently, it is a listed building, so it has protection under the listed building Conservation Act. So people should, what we have done, as I say, but we did it in consultation with the Historic Environment Scotland, and they were actually very helpful. they were content for it to be moved, given the circumstances that we had at the site. They've not said it needs to go back, but as I say, I think there are grounds to consider in the longer term what would be the most suitable outcome.
Okay.
Sorry.
By the way,
Thanks. So, Keith, on what you just said, I think you said that no matter where it's located, its listed status isn't jeopardised by that at all. It's still protected in that sense.
No, I think by moving it, that will alter its listed
Does it?
status. Yes.
Okay.
But it is possible. The listing is tied to an address of a property. So if you change the address, that changes the listing position. But it is also possible to ask for it to be relisted in its new position. So that is an option that's open to Resonate or the owner to ask for it to be listed. And then there would be a process that Historic Environment, it's not the council, it would be Historic Environment Scotland that would go through that process.
I appreciate there's much more to this application than the pillar itself, but it does have a significance to the area. Are we beyond being able to use the Section 75 process to secure it in some way as part of this application, or are we beyond that opportunity?
Well, I think what we have had following the fire and demolition, the heads of terms in Section 75, things have changed since committee last considered it and ourselves. So I think the heads of terms that we already had agreed was to bring forward arrangements to preserve and restore all the listed buildings, the walled gardens listed, as well as the pillar and Carsbridge House. The expectation or hope we have is the walled garden could potentially be used for community growing and restored to its original use. So I think there is scope within the heads of terms we'll have to reconsider now because there has been a change in circumstances. So I think that is open to be done, and the developer, the applicant, is keen to. They're keen to progress the application, and in pulling this report to committee is to really get an indication what committee's view is about taking forward the application and getting it, eventually determined. Obviously, we're conscious it is allocated in the local development plan for development. It's a major brownfield site in the area, so there's other benefits or reasons why we would want to try and get a suitable conclusion on the application as well.
Councillor Quinn.
Thank you. A little bit of follow-up there. About the pillar again. You're saying when we move address, the listing changes. How does it change? Is it completely removed? Is it changed? In what way is it changed? Can you clarify that, please?
My understanding is it would not be listed, and it would have to be a process to see whether it can be relisted if the location changes.
Okay, so right now then, it is not listed because we've moved address, is that correct? Yeah, the status is it right now, and we need to put it, or an application needs to put in and it will be reviewed to see if it would become listed again. Yes.
Well, my understanding is that Historic Environment Scotland will shortly be reviewing the listing of that and come to a conclusion about whether it should be delisted. And the advice we've had from is that if the address changes, I think it's maybe 300 or 400 metres it's moved, down towards the office buildings, but my understanding is that that's likely to be a change that would mean that they wouldn't list it. I don't think that's 100%, but I would be fairly confident that that's the case. And there is the option then to seek it to be relisted if it's in a new location.
that answer begs the question, and like the second half perhaps of Councillor Quinn's question. Putting it back where it came from, does that reinstate automatically the listing?
I think if it was reinstated where it was, there's a process underway by Historic Environment Scotland. Probably we'd have to seek their advice on that to give you a definitive view, but if it was back where it was, I would think it should be listed.
Okay.
Well, we don't know, so.
Councillor Law.
So therefore, could we change the section 75 to say that the process to list it again gets taken forward to Environmental Scotland then? That, could we not ask that as part of section 75, that is one of the processes that's taken forward, is to, after this process, that they're looking to see whether it's delisted because it's been moved, that then part of section 75 is to then redo the process, we'll start the process to relist it.
I'm not sure if that's a section 75 matter, because that's more about development contributions. That would be a planning.
I don't think we would require that to be covered by the section 75. That would be something the council or the owners could proceed with. I think anybody can ask sort of Environment Scotland to consider listing a building or a structure. That's something that we would have that option to do.
I was just thinking it's because we're only in this position because of the actions of the developer. So, you know, that there is a material change here. So I just thought that could then be put down that because of the actions that were taken, we've had this position. So why can't that happen?
I mean, I think to slightly clarify, it's really the actions of the vandalism that was taking place, which I'm not sure that was the developer, but you could argue whether they were secure enough, the buildings. But it was in relation to those risk threats to the listed buildings that, you know, that it was moved.
Councillor McTaggart, and then Councillor Quinn.
Thanks, convener. Just on the back of what Councillor Law has said, can we include in the section 75, because of the material change, that we want conditions around the future of the column, not necessarily the historic value of it as far as Historic Environment Scotland's concerned, but the value it has to Clackmannanshire. So could we protect that column under the section 75 and make it a condition of the section 75 that actually happens, that column is protected?
I'll maybe seek some advice from Lee here, but I think the heads of terms does allow for us to agree arrangements for preservation and restoration already. That was in the section 75. I think we would be talking about having to then amend or tweak those previous heads of terms, and the process to do that, the committee can do that. I think we can certainly cover that we know, and we deliver arrangements to make sure the pillar is protected and safeguarded as part of the development of the site. And that's something that we were seeking anyway, in terms of the section 75 for the house, the pillar and the walled garden.
I suppose the question is that sufficient for what you're asking?
Well,
I mean,
what's the actual
This is the summary. It said the developer will bring forward arrangements and a mechanism to deliver preservation and restoration of the listed buildings and respective curtilages on the site.
I would want that more specific. Sorry, convener. I would want that more specific for the column, given that it's been getting moved about, etc. Protected in consultation with planning, with the council, whatever, so that it's in a protected spot that we feel protects its future, because it belongs to us. Although it's on private ground, it belongs to the heritage of the county. So I think there should be a protected element in that to say that people just kind of willy-nilly do what they like with it. I mean, they could sit at the back of a tree for all we know at some point in the future. But if it was protected so that its heritage value was preserved, I just feel that it'd be too generic, that phrase that's in there at the moment, because we saw what happened to Carsbridge House. That's how much they cared about what was already there.
I suppose, from what I'm hearing from Keith, is the pillar has been moved and currently isn't ring fenced in terms of a listed building. So that provision, in terms of the heads and terms, does not cover the current location of the pillar. So that provision, it doesn't apply. So I hear what you're saying. Excuse me. So they're almost, there's a bit of blinking here in terms of where it's to be located and the protection around that. And it's not at the moment, and this is the bit I think that Keith was saying was, you know, it will be up to, so in other words, if it's moved back to where the original location was, there's a process that has to be followed through Historic Scotland or Historic Environmental Scotland in order to get that listed. So at the moment, we've got no pillar that's listed, so I don't think you're covered as in terms of that pillar, you know, because it's not listed. So I think we do have, I know we're currently in discussions around the report here, but there is an amendment being proposed, which I think may cover some of the concerns of elected members around this pillar position. I'm sure everybody's got the amendment in front of them, but I appreciate that we're currently obviously discussing the new report. Sorry, was that helpful? Does that confuse you even more? But
Sorry. I just feel, regardless of the listing, I mean, we could designate Enham as being important to the people of Clackmannanshire and put a protection around it, regardless of its listing as far as Historic Environment Scotland's concerned. We could say we'll protect this microphone if we felt like it, regardless of the Historic Environment Scotland listing. If we feel it is important enough, then it should be protected as part of the heritage.
so what I was just going to say is, in response to that, we can put it, we as a council, anybody can put an application in to have a property made for it to be listed. So if the planning authority is looking for us as a committee to put that listed in place, then we will do that as a planning authority.
No, sorry, Lee, sorry, maybe I'm not making it clear enough. It's not the fact of the historic listing that I'm trying to get at. It's the fact of the pillar being part of the heritage of the county. So regardless of what listing is put against it, I think it should be protected, and obviously we can make that application. But that application doesn't protect it. So if we as a planning authority can put that in the section 75 that there will be a protection built around it, clearly the historic value of that didn't protect the house. And I feel that that's not putting the protection around the pillar either. So if we were to build something in to say it must be protected, then I think if we've got that opportunity, then I think we should include it.
So can I cut in? So for clarification, what you would like to see is some sort of defensive perimeter around the location of the pillar to give it an actual physical defence, not just a legal defence, but a physical defence. Is that what you're asking about?
A virtual, if we see a virtual screen around it to say that pillar is protected.
So you're talking about legal protection then, not a physical one?
A planning authority protection.
Right. I think if you had been asking for a physical protection, that would have been a section 75 matter, because there's a cost involved in that. We'd be looking for someone to pay for that defensive barrier. But if it's a legal protection, then that's entirely different. There's no cost attaching to that. So it's not really section 75 material. I'm thinking about, I was willing to be corrected on that.
Wait, what was it, if it wasn't listed, or if there was a development and we thought, well, that, you know, we wanted to protect something or safeguard it, preserve it, I think planning system can ensure the development around it respects it. We have arrangements to ensure it's maintained, that it's likely to be, you know, looked after, there'll be maintenance arrangements. I don't think we can, though, legally provide some kind of protection where we can say if somebody does something to it, we can do something about it. I'm not sure would have any enforceable rules to do that. Being listed is a criminal offence then to damage it or alter it or remove it. So I think through the planning of the site, what we're saying here, what planning can deliver is that it's in a suitable location where it can be enjoyed and people can see it, and that we have arrangements about, we know who owns it and who's going to, you know, maintain it and be responsible for that. I think we can deliver that. I don't think we can then have some kind of long-term, I don't know, kind of protective cloak around it that, you know, we could do something about it if somebody doesn't look after it. I think that's going to be difficult, you know, long term to do that. But I think, as I say, I think there's scope to, and we don't have that information today, that we can look at addressing these concerns and how we put together heads of terms to do that.
Right. We'll look at it again when the master plan comes to us. Right, thanks.
That was a good.
Sorry, Brian.
Thank you. No, that's okay. Yeah, no, I agree with Councillor Taggart was saying about protecting things, but I also want it listed. How do we put an application to get it listed? Can we decide that today? Do we have to decide it somewhere else? Or is there some person decides that? How can we do that? Because I would like it to be listed in its current location.
So in terms of the current location that it's sitting in just now, you're looking for it to be listed.
Yes.
And then obviously we've got something else coming forward. So there's a couple of things here. So I think my understanding is that you've confirmed that Historic Scotland are already looking into listing the building. Where is current location, is that correct? Is that actually categorically?
They're looking at the fact it's moved, whether it would need to be delisted is what they're looking at the moment. What they're about to look at.
Delisted?
Yes.
Okay. Well, okay, I mean, the planning authority is asking for listed building application.
Can I help out here? So my understanding is the pillar's actually listed as we talk, as we speak, as a listed B pillar, even although it's been moved. However, Historic Scotland in due time, because listed B refers to the setting of a pillar, may delist it for that reason. But as we speak, my understanding is that it is a listed B architectural feature that's protected in the grounds of Resonate. But that's why I've raised the issue, is that generally when people are looking at historic gardens, etc., they like to see the artefact within its context, and the context was its connection to Carsbridge House and the Wall Garden.
Okay, so that seems to me to be a very logical, so I'll come back to you in a moment, a very logical way of looking at it. It's currently listed, but it's maybe on the way to being delisted. And the reason that it might be delisted is because of the conceptual change that you mentioned, Donald. It's now a garden ornament. It's not a Napoleonic pillar in its historic setting, and that's the crucial part of it. So in order to earn this listing, it may well have to go back to its original location. Would be.
I believe it's, sorry, I believe it's kind of historic value is its antiquity. So the antiquity of the pillar. So I think I said before that we don't know what the outcome of the process would be in it being relisted. If it was to remain where it is, it may be. I don't think I can tell committee today that, you know, we know the outcome of that, because that's a process Historic Environment Scotland did.
Yeah, well, that's historic value regardless of where it is. So, could we then, can we say, clarify if it's listed or not, and if it is not listed, can we apply to make it listed? Or if the status changes and it becomes unlisted, if it is listed, it becomes unlisted, can then we apply again straight away to make it listed again? That's what I would like to happen, if that's possible.
You can apply to list anybody.
Yeah.
That's my understanding.
Could do that.
Yeah. But the planning service could take that forward if that was the, you know, the outcome of anything.
That's the answer. Any further questions? Okay, in that case, I'll propose the paper. The paper broadly disposes with the idea of the investigation, the legal investigation into any criminal acts. That package has been handed over to another authority. We need to concern ourselves with that. What we're looking at now is restitution, the path of remediation. And we've been offered in the agreed section 2.1.2, been given 4 options in the papers, and the council officers have proposed that we adopt option 1. That's the main decision we're taking today as far as coming to an agreement of some sort. So does anybody wish to second the paper?
Can I get notification of amendment? I'd be happy to second your paper if my amendment is accepted, but I think to keep it clean, I think we need just a second. Therefore,
Formal second.
I'll second it. Proposal and a second, it can be conditional amendment.
100% agree. I don't think that was a conditional seconding, was it? You're seconding it.
I'll say.
Councillor McTaggart will second it. Right. It's at this point that we introduce the new business, which is a motion that's been brought forward to council by amendment brought forward by Councillor Basili, which clashed with some of the standing order regulations, but I have the ability to override that if I feel that urgency is involved in the decision. And the test I applied to that was, would the approval of the paper as it stands block the amendment being discussed at a future date? And on being informed that that was the case, I have decided to rule that on urgency grounds we will hear the amendment. And Councillor Dulcie will now propose that to us.
thank you, Chair. I'd like to speak to the paper, but before I do, I just want to add about the amendment process. Previous chair of the planning committee, it has been custom and practice in the planning committee through the debate when we've discussed quite complex developments to receive amendments on the day. I just want to make that point clear. However, we had a briefing about this development yesterday, and I've been informed that any amendment, that was at 3:30, and any amendment would have had to be required by 12 o'clock, which was clearly impossible to do. But being tiniest as possible to prepare for this amendment. Talking to the paper very quickly, there's no doubt that advanced construction in our time have gone ahead and demolished a Grade B listed building, and that case is within the hands of the Procurator Fiscal. We could take a very champion approach to feel that we've been disrespected. I know on at least 2 occasions our planning officers tried to stop that demolition, but advanced construction went ahead. However, the paper is very clear that that will be handled by the Procurator Fiscal, and the real issue we're discussing today is the revised terms of the Section 75 agreement. And I find it actually quite sad that we've been debating the pillar, but the reality is that's the only remaining listed artefact that remains from this site, apart from the former distillery buildings in Ogle House and Harvey House, which in my understanding aren't listed. So I'm providing a context to my amendment. So the first, I'd like to suggest that we change and add to the recommendation point 5 with 4, that has 4 bullet points. and that request that the Section 75 agreement agrees to provide for consideration and relocation of the pillar back to its original location in a landscape setting, subject to agreement that the pillar will be at a reduced risk for vandalism and lack of maintenance. And that addresses, in my mind, the issues that we're having over listing, the historical context and location of where the pillar is, and indeed trying to address who will maintain the pillar setting in the future, which may well be a factor in agreement. But I'm saying that that is a key element for negotiation within the Section 75 agreement. The second point is, why is it sad we're debating the pillar? The pillar itself was an important artefact in Cairo, but Napoleon, when he invaded, he nicked that artefact, and then he lost the Egyptian campaign, and the British Army took the pillar, and they decided to flog it off in Italy, of all places, and it was bought by a German purchaser who clearly thought very highly of the Harveys, who owned Casterbridge House, and he donated it to the Harvey family. And that's its historical context. But you would only know that because of what I call the old interpretive panel, the brass plaque that was there, which has disappeared. Now, I don't know if that brass plaque, presumably it's nicked for scrap value, but I don't know whether it was the time that Advanced Construction owned it or indeed Diageo. But I think the plaque itself in providing an interpretive panel really ought to be restored. And I would like to see that also as part of our heritage request under Section 75. So I'm asking for a replacement in point 2 of the plaque. The second element in Advanced Construction, they've very kindly provided the various options and commissioned Simpson and Brown. The key thing that stood out to my mind in all of the options that Simpson and Brown put forward was that there was no real recognition that Casterbridge House might have some sort of commercial future use, that indeed in the restoration of the walled garden you wouldn't park cars in the walled garden, and indeed within the site there was a proposal for the restoration of Oakham House and Harvey House to become a cultural centre. And therefore, I feel that would have a significant car parking demand in the area. And so I'm asking that, and the general trend within planning to reduce car movements is actually to restrict car parking now, both in standards, etc. So I do feel that we ought to get for enhanced provision, the 12.3, that as part of Section 75 agreement, we ask for enhanced provision of car parking in the landscape master plan to service the likely increase in demand there. And that's for debate between Advanced Construction and our planners. And finally, the fourth element is that we've lost a lot of heritage value on this site and in the adjacent area. And Advanced Construction actually helpfully are selling the two buildings to Resonate. I don't think we should interfere in that transaction at all. But I do feel the aspirations of Resonate to restore the houses will involve a considerable amount of money. And given Advanced Construction's previous attitude towards heritage features, but also their recent commitment, to be fair, they have moved the pillar to safeguard it. And indeed, they're selling on the existing buildings on site for the use as a cultural campus, which is laudable. But I do feel that to date, their contributions have been fairly modest to that enterprise, and I'm only asking that as point 4, as part of this Section 75 agreement, the Advanced Construction that examine an enhanced financial contribution to enable the restoration of Oakham and Harvey House as part of the proposed community campus for heritage and the arts. And so that's a bit long-winded, but I thought I'd provide a context and the explanation as to how that amendment's broken down. And I'm looking for elected member support for that amendment.
Thank you, councillor. Do we have a seconder? Do you have a seconder for your amendment? I know it's been a very short time to arrange that. Councillor Law? Formally or?
I'll formally shout that I second it.
Question time. Does anyone wish to question the councillor about his amendment? Okay. We have it's proposed and seconded. Do you wish to debate in any way the amendment? No. Shall we then vote on the amendment? Those in favour, please raise your hand. Unanimous. Oh, online. Yes. Thank you, Kenny.
I can't see Councillor Keogh.
I am.
Pardon?
I can't see Councillor Keogh to be able to give her the vote.
Right, Councillor Keogh. No. Is he still with us?
I see his camera's off.
Are you able to indicate? Temporarily absent. Yes, on a majority basis, the amendment is carried. Right. That being so, we now look at what we are being asked to agree to. That's on page 89. The main thing. We haven't debated the paper. Yes, you're dead right. Sorry, procedure there. Okay, we've had the questions, we've had amendment, and now we are at the debate stage for the paper. Does anyone wish to raise any comments at this point? Okay. I wonder. I know we're past the point of questions, but for clarification, we're being offered option 1 in the paper, which, but there's a second aspect to that, I think, was the infill type of property. That's not really been, because the developer is building the shell. That's been said in their narrative. But they haven't, and they have suggested in what the internal might be. They gave a choice of an option and a design inside. We're not making an election on the infill of the property, are we?
On the interior, no. I think my view would be that the external shell and design is the critical thing, and that if the internal layout was to more modern standards, that would be preferable than a kind of historic replication internally.
Okay, so if we accept the paper as it stands, we are deferring a decision on the internals.
That would be, well, I think it would be moving towards, a solution that was based on option 1, and the design details of that would have to be agreed as part of future matters specified in condition.
So we're not hog tying ourselves at the moment in terms of that, by accepting this as it stands.
Okay. I think it's only an issue of whether there should be, exact replica internal layout, but that would raise its own issues in terms of the building regulations, current standards, and I think historic, what we're trying to replicate would be the appearance of the building, in the landscape, and the option 1 would deliver that, irrespective of, the actual internal layout.
And we're not tied to any internal layout. We're only voting to accept option 1, which is a shell.
Yes.
Fundamentally. Right. Just wanted to get that clarification. Councillor Law.
Can I just get clarification? So is that the site layout option 1 we're talking about, and not because I'm just going through their little booklet, because then they've got the site option 1, 2, 3, and then they're talking about faithful reconstruction and option A, B, C. I take it we're saying that they'll choose that, but can I just confirm that option E isn't an option? Because option E is just they're saying the landscape of the site of the house, which looks like they would just do a wee wall as to where the original walls were in the house.
what we are choosing between is the shell building or something completely different. 3 other options which are not the shell replacement. So we're being asked to approve a paper that says we don't want modern building, we don't want anything that isn't the original shell. Let's be clear about that. That's what we're asking.
That's what I wanted to check, because that's what, to me, option E isn't the shell, it's just a, but just because we were saying option 1, 2 and 3, I thought that related to the site
Yeah.
rather than the,
I think the options here are 1 to 4, and the internal designs are a different thing entirely. We're not being asked to commit at this stage to the internals at all.
I thought option 4 was just a landscape of that sort of.
It's option 1 is the one that was recommended, is that right, Chair?
And that's the option 1 under,
Aye.
right, that's grand, that's that, and that includes everything. Right. So I just wanted to check.
These options, these are listed with a letter, not a number.
Yeah, that's what I was confused when you were talking about like the inlay of the house and whatnot, and
I was trying to say we're not actually selecting the
right,
image at this
that's
point.
grand, right, thank you.
We're only selecting, the pictures. Yeah. Whatever they are. Fine. Right, okay. We are now clear on what we are about to vote, I hope. Right. Those in favour, raise your hand. Councillor Errol, are you voting for the paper?
Yeah, I'm fine. I was just looking for some specific, but yeah, I'm happy with the paper.
No answer from Councillor Keogh. He's absent, so yeah, majority or is unanimous. Thank you. I think that concludes our business. Thank you very much for your time and your patience. I'm sorry about the delay which overran. Meeting ends at 11:25.